Coping mechanisms. Cult edition. Okay, all, this is a big one. So let's start at the beginning. What the heck are coping mechanisms anyway? And do we have them because we're weak losers, circling the drain of a downward spiral, like Scientology said? Basically, they're what humans do to survive overwhelming emotions or situations. Sometimes they're healthy, like journaling, breathing exercises, or petting a dog. That one is 10 out of 10, highly recommend. But for many of us who grew up in cults or high-control environments, our coping mechanisms were more like a fruit salad of dysfunction, but not at all about being weak. Growing up in a place like Scientology, you don't get the luxury of feeling safe, pretty much ever. Your emotions weren't valid, your pain was your fault, and asking for help, not an option. We were blamed and taught to blame ourselves when we struggled. We were told we pulled in anything bad and that we just needed to be cause over life, make it go right, and for Pete's sake, stop dramatizing. And while you're at it, get your TRs and your ethics in, and come up the tone scale for good measure. So as kids, we didn't get real tools to handle all the pressures of life, much less a cult. We got gobbledygook instead. So being creative, we invented our own ways to get by. While these strategies might have kept us alive then, like duct tape holding our insides in, now they're more like that one janky IKEA shelf you built totally wrong, with all those parts left over. Yeah, it's holding together, but barely. Here's the thing, growing up in Scientology meant our emotional foundation was made of quicksand. We learned to suppress. Feeling sad, angry, hurt? Nope. Push those feelings way down, like a balloon underwater. And when they pop back up, hello gravity. Just pretend they didn't exist. We discovered the hard way that vulnerability is dangerous. Show weakness and you'll be shamed. Open up and whatever you admit to will be used against you for eternity. And real help? That was a 4-letter word. Therapy, psychiatry, or medication? Oh my, they weren't just discouraged, they were demonized. We were taught we were responsible for our own suffering. Remember, if Scientology didn't work, it was our fault for not applying it properly. Pain was a sign of failure. A failure to confront our reactive mind, to as-is our trauma, or to just get over ourselves. If we weren't happy, successful, and free, it meant we weren't doing Scientology right. We learned real Scientologists don't need help, they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, man. Except, of course, when LRH needed his cigarettes lit by teenage girls, wearing short shorts. But okay. So when our bootstraps broke, we found other solutions, and while those methods might have kept us alive or functional at one time, they're like wearing a giant life jacket, only on land. Sure, it helped us not to drown, but now it's just making it impossible to put on our coat and get in and out of the car. So if these tools helped us, even saved us, you might wonder why they might be getting in the way now. Think of coping mechanisms as life-sized emotional band-aids that we're still using to patch up our problems. All these years later, some of them were downright creative, but others straight up destructive. But before we dive into why these behaviors show up and how we can let them go, let's acknowledge this very real fact. Coping mechanisms, even the messy ones, exist for a legit reason. They literally helped us survive an almost unsurvivable childhood. So a big thank you to coping mechanisms far and wide. We needed you. You showed up when no one else did. Now let's break down some things we used, piece by piece, because every single one has a story behind it. Drinking and partying. If you can't feel your feelings or be social, maybe tequila can help? Because nothing says I've got this under control like 4 margaritas before lunch. Add a chaotic party environment, and you've got a recipe for opening up or numbing out while pretending to live it up. Years of suppressing emotions, fear of quiet moments, being uncomfortable in your own skin, or needing an escape from pesky, painful memories got you here. Especially after some particularly repressed teen years, we can tend to go wild here after leaving. Meanwhile, alcohol was on Scientology's approved list, so it wasn't a crime to get drunk, unless you were on course or in session. Drugs. Have an overwhelming need to not feel because feeling wasn't safe? Drugs became the ultimate off switch for pain. Why did we need this fast track? The unbearable weight of emotions we were never taught to process. This one was illegal in Scientology, which made it all the more alluring to many of us. Plus, if you did LSD, you couldn't be recruited into the Sea Org. Spoiler, they'd try anyway. Promiscuity, trying to find love, connection, experience intimacy, or at least get a free dinner in all the wrong places. A lifetime of being shown we had to earn love and affection, that it was transactional, if we deserved it at all, taught us this nifty skill. Shoplifting. They owe me for stealing my childhood, we thought, while slipping earrings into our pocket. It's not about the stuff, it's about the control, about reclaiming something in a world that took everything from us. Feeling powerless and unseen, combined with the need to rebel in small, sneaky ways, brought us here. Shopping addiction. We were taught we didn't need or deserve nice things. We only needed Scientology. So now we buy all the nice things we can, and then end up feeling empty anyway. Retail therapy can be lots of fun until the bill comes. Nothing like trying to fill emotional holes with pretty stuff because real comfort wasn't available. The secret? Those holes in our hearts won't ever fill with stuff. I've tried. Binge eating. Food is safe. It doesn't yell, judge, or abandon you. It's there, it's reliable, and it's comforting until it's not. No comfort as a child, no stability, no idea how to process feelings, so we eat them instead. A lack of emotional support growing up left us hungry for something in our soul. Self-harm. Physical pain was easier to control than emotional pain. It was a way to feel something real, or to silence everything. If Scientology taught us that emotional pain wasn't valid, we thought, fine, here's some physical pain instead. And I can see it so I know it's real. Years of being told our emotions were invalid, didn't matter, or shouldn't exist at all has a cost. Isolation. If nobody gets close, nobody can hurt you. That's the logic anyway. But sometimes we build walls so high no one can climb over them. Not even us. Being burned by too many people we trusted, we learned that connection wasn't safe. Unhealthy attachment styles. Love as obligation, fear of abandonment, or trauma bonding. It's a grab bag of relationship dysfunction, full of codependency, or even pushing people away. It's all about relationships that don't work because we truly have no idea what healthy ones look like. Suicidality, the darkest coping mechanism and the one we've lost far too many kids to. What do you do when you felt hopeless, overwhelmed, and out of options for far too long in a world that didn't feel survivable? Yep, this one hits hard. Okay, so that's a lot, right? But it all makes sense. The burning question, can we even kick these things? First, let's cut ourselves some slack. These habits didn't come out of nowhere, they were survival tools. They kept us going when we didn't have better options. Here's the tricky part. Letting go of unhealthy coping doesn't mean flipping a switch. The key is figuring out what they were trying to do for us and finding healthier ways to meet those needs. This is where therapy comes in. But let's be honest. If you grew up in Scientology, the very word therapy might make your skin crawl. Yeah, the giant elephant in the room, therapy. For us, therapy is a dirty word. And seeking outside help? That meant you were degraded or unsavable. In Scientology, traditional therapy was treated like witchcraft. Psychiatry? The devil. Antidepressants? Literal poison. We were taught that the very tools that could help us were completely evil and would steal our souls. Scientology weaponized real help, turned it into a human rights violation, a fate worse than death, and made us believe that needing it meant we were broken beyond repair. No wonder we run the other way. Who wouldn't? Even after leaving, that shitty stigma sticks. That's why so many of us try everything else first. Drinking, partying, isolating, eating our feelings, crying into a bucket of KFC? Why not? Therapy, though, that's scary. And sometimes, by the time we're ready, it's too late. But here's the truth. Therapy isn't weakness. It's actually strength. It's like learning how to walk after years of being told you had to crawl. It's one of the gutsiest moves you'll ever make. And it's not about fixing something broken. It's about healing something hurt. Being willing to dig through the wreckage of what happened, to feel the feelings you've buried, to trust someone enough to share your story. It's some of the bravest work you can do. So, if you're ready to be a little brave, here's some options that are out there. One-on-one talk therapy. Just you, your therapist, and occasionally enough tissues to rival a Costco-sized Kleenex pack. Sometimes you just need someone to sit with your story and say, "Wow, that's heavy, I'm here." It's a safe space to unpack your emotional baggage with someone who knows how to help. Even after all this time, saying things out loud can make them real, and that's the first step to dealing with them. And no, not like an auditing session, although it is called a session, more like a safe space to discuss anything and everything. Just having someone listen without judgment can be transformative. I promise you won't be sent to ethics later. Group therapy, a space where you can share your story and realize you're not alone in it. No culty vibes, promise. Just a room full of people who get it, without the mandatory matching uniforms this time. Sharing your story with others who understand what you went through can be powerful and even surprisingly funny at times. It's not Scientology group processing, though. No commands or e-meter drills, I swear. Medication. Meds aren't a magic wand, but they can be a solid foundation to start rebuilding. The right one can make the world go from a scream to a whisper. Sometimes the brain just needs a little support, and there's zero shame in that. Think of it like giving your mind a well-deserved Liberty Day. A little time off for good behavior. No CSW required. Art nature therapy. Yep, you get to paint stuff and get out into nature. Sometimes that's all you need. Birds, sunshine, green grass, some earth under your feet, and repeat. Hopefully this conversation and understanding a little better just how common these issues are for us helps you feel less alone, less broken. You're so much stronger than you know. You've made it to this point. You're asking questions and looking for answers. Way too many of us got lost to our unhealthy coping mechanisms. Too many of us didn't make it out. Every single one of us deserved help, but some never got it in time. The ones who were failed by the systems that should have protected them, by the cult that tried to break them, and a world outside that didn't understand their pain. We carry their stories with us, not as a burden, but as a reminder of why this work matters. Healing isn't just for us, it's for them too. Their stories matter, their lives matter, they matter. And for those of us who are still here, if you're navigating your coping mechanisms, take it slow, be gentle with yourself. And if therapy feels too big right now, start with something small, a conversation, a book, a community. Letting go isn't about forgetting where you've been, it's about choosing where you want to go next. And letting go of familiar, dependable, but unhealthy coping mechanisms is messy, awkward, and sometimes feels impossible. But it's also worth it. We're worth it. Let's try putting down the coping mechanisms that no longer serve us. Maybe try the scary things, like therapy, and see what's possible just on the other side. We get to decide that we're more than what happened to us. Because we are. Oh, one more last-minute coping mechanism addition. Smoking. One of those things we clung to because, let's face it, it was one of the few things we could cling to. We weren't considered kids. We were big beings in small bodies, and since LRH smoked like a chimney, it wasn't exactly frowned upon. In fact, it was normalized. If it was good enough for the Commodore, it was good enough for us. Smoking became a crutch, a companion, and a coping mechanism that felt like it fit perfectly into our lifestyle. It made sense in so many ways. For one, the stress and anxiety of staff or Sea Org life were constant. The endless work hours, the pressure to produce, the scrutiny, the ethics cycles, it never stopped. A cigarette was one of the few socially acceptable ways to pause, to step away, to literally breathe for a moment. And coffee? The unofficial drink of Scientology. Pair that with a cigarette, and it was like you were part of the team. A stressed-out, chain-smoking, over-caffeinated team. But still. In a world where individuality and free time were stripped away, smoking felt like one of the few things you could choose to do. For many of us, smoking became our constant companion. It was there in the middle of the night when we were exhausted but had hours of work left. It was there when we were spiraling with anxiety, giving us a reason to step outside, even for 5 minutes. It was there when we felt isolated, when we didn't know how to connect with others. Somehow having a cigarette in hand made us feel less alone. It gave us something to hold on to, something to focus on. And socially, smoking gave us a way to bond with others. A shared lighter, a quick chat during a smoke break. It became a way to connect in an environment that didn't exactly encourage real connection. If you didn't know what to say, at least you had a cigarette to hold. Even after leaving, for many of us, smoking stuck around. It's not hard to see why. The stress of our experiences didn't magically go away, and neither did the anxiety. And for ex-Sea Org members and Scientologists in general, smoking was such a part of the culture that quitting almost felt like losing a piece of ourselves. Despite all the health warnings, the stats, and the public campaigns, many Scientologists, especially ex-Sea Org, still smoke. For some of us, it's one of the hardest habits to let go of, not just because of the nicotine, but because of what it represented. Smoking wasn't just a habit, it was a survival tool. So honestly, letting it go isn't just about breaking a physical addiction. It's about finding new ways to deal with all the reasons we picked it up in the first place. And that's the tricky part. Replacing something that feels like a trusted friend, a stress reliever, and a social bridge all rolled into one isn't easy. But it's worth it, because we deserve to breathe freely, to find healthier ways to manage stress and anxiety, and to reconnect with ourselves and others in ways that don't harm us. I finally kicked it, and I know you can too.